The Wizard of Quantum by Johann Ortel. Chapter 2. A Warm Welcome. That evening, Markus arrived at the Silva house. The night air was crisp, and the sky threatened snow. He stepped out of his car, adjusting the collar of his dark coat and straightening the scarf around his neck. In one hand, he carried a grocery bag, in the other, a bouquet of flowers. He approached the front door and rang the bell, listening to the chime echo inside. After a few moments, the doorbell chimed as Susan opened the door, her face lighting up with excitement. "Markus," she exclaimed, her smile broadening. "You're early. I'm so glad you could make it." Markus stood in the doorway, hesitant, almost as if waiting for something. "Are you going to invite me in?" he asked, his tone polite, yet slightly teasing. Susan blinked, realizing her oversight. "Oh my, where are my manners? Please come in," she said, stepping aside to let him enter. Markus crossed the threshold, his footsteps muffled by the polished wood flooring as Susan closed the door behind him. The warmth of the house welcomed him, and he could hear the gentle crackling of a fire from the lounge. He handed the flowers to Susan. "For the lady of the house." Susan accepted the flowers with a smile. "Thank you, Markus. These are lovely. Let me take your coat," she gestured. "And the groceries?" she asked. "If you'd allow it," Markus said, handing over the grocery bag. "I'd like to make my famous tomato soup starter. I promise I'll share the family recipe." Susan's eyes sparkled with curiosity. "That sounds wonderful. Come meet the rest of the family." They walked past the cozy lounge and the dining room, where a 6-seater table was set, each plate perfectly aligned. The atmosphere grew livelier as they entered the kitchen, where the aroma of a festive feast filled the air. A bottle of wine sat uncorked on the counter, and dishes in various stages of preparation crowded the countertops. Susan clapped lightly to get everyone's attention. Graham turned from the stove, where he had been stirring a pot. "Our special guest has arrived," she announced. "This is Markus, the one I've been telling you about." Susan proceeded with introductions. "And this is my husband, Graham." Graham wiped his hands on a dish towel and approached, extending his hand. "Nice to meet you, Markus." Markus shook his hand firmly. "Likewise." "You've already met little Massimo," Susan continued, glancing at her son, who was setting up a chessboard on the dining table. Markus nodded. The boy waved and beamed up at Markus, clearly eager for the evening's activities. "Markus has kindly offered to make his famous tomato soup starter," Susan added, placing the grocery bag on the counter. "So please, make yourself at home. My father is running a bit late, but I'll check on him." Susan excused herself from the kitchen, her smile fading as she pulled out her phone and stepped into the lounge. The worry that had been gnawing at her all day returned as she checked her messages. Her father still hadn't arrived, and there was no word from him. With a deep breath, she dialed his number again. "The number you have dialed is not available. Please leave a message after the beep," the voicemail informed her. "Dad, it's me again," Susan said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Just checking if you're all right. Call me when you get this." She ended the call and returned to the kitchen, where the mood was decidedly lighter. Just shy of an hour had passed, and they were still waiting for news on Susan's father. Little Massimo had drawn Markus into a game of chess, with Graham observing from the sidelines. "Bishop to f4, little Massimo declared. "Your move." Susan sat at the table, her thoughts still on her father. Graham noticed her distraction and reached over to squeeze her hand. "Any news about your dad, honey?" Susan shook her head, her worry deepening. "I still can't reach him. This weather, and he's out there, it just has me worried." She sighed, feeling the weight of the situation. "And I'm being such a bad host. I'm so sorry." Markus looked at her with understanding. "No need to be. I understand." He moved a piece on the board. "Does your father live here with you?" "No, he still lives in New York. He's visiting for Thanksgiving and was supposed to look after little Massimo while we're away in L.A. for a few days," Susan explained. "Los Angeles?" Markus asked, raising an eyebrow. "So you're also in the magic business?" "The magic business?" Susan echoed, a bittersweet smile tugging at her lips. "After the accident, all the magic just disappeared." Markus looked puzzled, sensing the gravity in her words. "The accident? What accident?" Susan hesitated, her gaze drifting to the floor before she spoke. "My father's brother, my Uncle Abramo, died in a car accident." Graham, who had been quietly listening, elaborated. It was a terrible accident. Same evening after the last show. The car caught fire. Body burnt beyond recognition. It was horrific. Uncle Abramo left his New York apartment to my father in his will, Susan continued, her voice tinged with sadness. And my father was the sole beneficiary of his brother's insurance policies. Marcus's eyes narrowed slightly. Interesting. So my father sold our old house, and we all moved into the New York apartment, Susan concluded, the memory bringing a slight furrow to her brow. Across the table, little Massimo made his move on the chessboard. White Castle's queenside, he announced with a confident smile. Markus responded with a thoughtful move of his own, his focus shifting back to the game. So, to answer your question, Susan added, we're not in the magic business anymore, but we've kept the Silva family name as a legacy. Graham chuckled softly. And how do you fill the shoes of the great Massimo Silva and the Silva Bullet, right? A brief silence fell over the room, the weight of the past settling in. Markus finally broke it, raising his glass. A toast to the Silva Bullet, he said, his voice solemn, the greatest magic trick the world has ever seen. They all lifted their glasses, nodding in acknowledgement of the toast. Little Massimo leaned in to make another move. Markus responded, but little Massimo was ready to claim another piece on his next move. Pawn takes c6, the boy declared. His eyes gleamed with the thrill of the game, but Markus recaptured with the knight. Susan's mind drifted back to her childhood. I remember the first night of the Silva Bullet act, she murmured, her voice filled with awe. I still get goosebumps. I was so shocked. She paused, lost in the memory. I was only 9 or 10. Nobody prepared me for what was about to happen. Her voice trailed off. The room fell into a contemplative silence as the echoes of the past lingered in the air.